I want to shift this back to 2024 Oregon football here, Ryan, and what Dan Lanning has in front of him. Third straight year, Oregon will have a transfer quarterback starting 2 years ago. Nix, now Dillon Gabriel. A couple questions I want to ask you about Gabriel and get your thoughts on. First one is, when you look at Oregon's schedule, I did this exercise briefly on a recent show, and my answer was probably yes, barring a couple of unknowns with opposing quarterbacks. Do you think Oregon is going to go into all 12 games this year with an advantage at quarterback?
Yeah, good point, because the way that the schedule breaks down, I don't see a quarterback on that list. It's interesting you said that. There was some sort of a list that somebody had made. College football maybe did the top 25, the list of different players that were on that. And Dillon Gabriel made that list. He with like you have to have a certain kind of rating or something to make that list. He has a 90 something rating. And I thought it was interesting that they rated the best player at Oregon as Dillon Gabriel.
You talking about EA College Football 25?
Maybe that was the list.
Yeah, it could be.
Out with. Yeah, but I thought it was interesting that they made that because I don't know. I hate to be honest. The transfer portal quarterback thing. That's just how it's going to be for everybody. It feels like in the future. Unless you have a guy who's ready to go for your next level, you're gonna have a transfer in. I mean, and it's going to be hard to have these teams that these blue blood programs not have a transfer, because everybody's going to want to go there. And so I'm excited for Dillon Gabriel. From what I've seen, I really like his style. A left-handed quarterback who can move on the run. I think watching all the game film, for me, he really likes to kind of get off of his back foot a little bit and spring up a little bit. And that's kind of a classic play from a smaller quarterback. I just went and played, you were talking about Manzanita Golf Course. Shouts out to Manzanita here. I just went and played that last week with my high school quarterback. And he was kind of a shorter guy as well. He was a classic build, right? 5'10" or whatever. And he would kind of get that little pop, almost that jump pass type motion or whatever. And I think that when he sits in the pocket, he can throw the ball well as well. But I think this offense is going to be really, really hard to stop with him on the move, throwing to a wide variety of targets. They're going to put a lot of pressure on these teams. So I think, one, his talent level is going to be better maybe than, like you said, everybody on that roster. But I think more importantly, the way that they cook up this offense, I think he's going to have some really big games this year. There's going to be some good defenses they're going to face, don't get me wrong, but I think they're going to put up a lot of points.
Yeah, I think so too. Ohio State and Michigan are going to have legit defenses that will be difficult to move the ball on, even more so than a Utah in recent years, or Oregon State when they had a good defense a couple of seasons ago. I think those two defensive units are at another level. I think the only guys that are arguable as at least being on similar footing as Gabriel going into the game, because the Big Ten is just a really weak quarterback conference this year. I think Will Rogers at Washington is actually pretty solid. Will Howard at Ohio State. I'd rather have Gabriel, but he's at the very least similar. I don't know what Malachi Nelson is at Boise State. I think Aiden Childs has got a lot of potential at Michigan State, but I don't know if he's going to realize that in his first year. He could become better than what Gabriel is. I just don't know if he is right now. And then you just go up and down the list, and you're like, Maryland's got a battle, and Luke Altmaier at Illinois, no. Hudson Card at Purdue, no. And these are the Ethan Garbers at UCLA. It's just it's not quite as tough. But I've got one more question for Ryan on the Dillon Gabriel front, and we're going to get to that one next, because it's about where Gabriel stands for Oregon quarterbacks. Not literally, this is a little bit more of a metaphorical exercise. So Ryan, finishing up your thoughts on Dillon Gabriel here, look at it this way. Oregon's had a great run of quarterbacks for the most part. We shall exclude a couple of particular seasons and quarterbacks. We need not beat anybody down. Where do you think Dillon Gabriel can fit into kind of the all-time quarterback rankings, production, season standpoint? I look at him and I think he can be a little bit better. I think he's a little bit more accurate than Darren Thomas, but that's the way I view him. It's not a game manager type, but it's somebody, maybe a Jeremiah Masoli that, some games he does kind of lay back and let the running game carry you to a win, and the defense plays well, and he just makes a couple throws here and there. But every now and then you look up, you're like, oh, he's got 370 yards passing and 4 touchdowns. That's where I think he fits into this Oregon offense.
Yeah, I would agree. I on the last topic, talking about going from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten quarterback play. The Pac-12 has had such great quarterback play over its time. Going to a conference without that solid week to week to week. I mean, some of the best quarterbacks we've seen over the years, comparatively to the Big Ten, they lean on a different type of game. They lean on that defensive run game. So it's going to be interesting. You said Jeremiah Masoli. I think he's actually the body type. If you want to see kind of how these guys look, I think actually Vernon Adams would be the guy who I think if you could get the 1 year comp of the way he kind of is a playground player, in the sense that he's going to make the play. You talked about game manager. I don't get game manager vibes from him. I get wheeling and dealing vibes from him. And I get the fact that you might be able to go out there and make some big plays, might put you in a negative spot as well. Might be a little bit more risky for interception. Bo was so calculated in his second year. He was so good. He knew what he was doing. He had that completion dialed in. I don't think Gabriel's in that same mindset. I think he's going to go and say, I got 1 year to make the biggest splash I can at the end of my career and see where this thing can take me. Because as it sits right now, I don't think he's really on anybody's radar for an NFL prospect or a big NFL prospect. And so, this could be a situation where you never know. You could get hot, it could get rolling, and crazy things can happen. He's stronger than I think people think he is. He's, I think, more athletic than people give him credit for. But I think in his mind, he is very confident. And I think Bo Nix was confident as well. But I think Bo Nix got burned from his confidence when he was younger, as a younger player. His overconfidence put him in the bad Bo position. And he went to a much more humble place as a quarterback. He leaned on the Bible. He simplified things down. He went to a kind of a different level. I think Dillon Gabriel's done quite the opposite. Every step he's taken, he's gotten more and more and more of a wheeling and dealing, kind of a gun smoke sort of idea. I just keep going back to that game, that Texas-Oklahoma game. It's the game where I see him really take over the game, and he's the one making the plays. It's not like it's the offense making the plays and he's just putting the guys in the right position like a point guard. He's the main attraction.
Yeah, I think he can be that. I don't think he is that the way Bo Nix was this past year, where Bo went on a stretch where he's going for 350 to 400 every game and 4 to 5 touchdowns and no interceptions. I don't expect that from Dillon Gabriel, but certainly I love the Vernon Adams comp. My mind went to Thomas and Masoli, but I think the Adams comp is a good one. When Vernon Adams started, and if he had stayed healthy, I will die on this hill. If Vernon Adams stays healthy, Oregon goes to the playoff. 1,000%. 1,000%.
I agree.
Adams was throwing for 264 yards a game, 65% completion, 26 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. That's what I think Oregon needs from the quarterback position this year, because when you look around at the quarterbacks in the Big Ten, like we've been talking about, they're not that strong. So even those sorts of numbers, which are not Bo Nix Heisman numbers or anything like that, that is going to be one of the best quarterbacks, maybe the best production-wise in the entire Big Ten. And as I said, that team, if Vernon Adams has been healthy, goes to the playoff. And I think that's where Oregon is at here, certainly in the 12-team era. If Dillon Gabriel puts up those sorts of numbers, I think that Oregon is a borderline lock to make the college football playoff.
Yeah, and I would say if we're in the 12-team playoff, all those quarterbacks are going. Masoli, Darren Thomas, all those guys, they're all going to the playoff. The reason why I say Vernon Adams more than Masoli, in just a theoretical sense, the quarterback, Masoli was a tuck it and go guy. He would go through his progressions, his read would go from 1, 2, go. And you can tell that type of mentality. He was willing to go, put his body on the line, get a first down. He was a head first type of runner. He didn't slide, that kind of thing. Whereas Vernon Adams, he was I'm going to run around and try to make a play. Almost more Patrick Mahomes-like, right? And then he will break off a run every once in a while, but he'll break off a run because the defense is expecting him to stay in the pocket and try to make a play with his hands and throw the ball. So I really like the idea when I watch the film on Gabriel. He's going to extend the play. And when you extend the play with this many offensive weapons on the offense for wide receivers, holy moly, crazy things can happen. And we see this in the NFL over and over and over.